Hey guys, this is Tom, and if you're new to my channel, I make videos that help you empower your higher self and manifest your dream life. In this video, we're going to be covering another Neville Goddard concept, and that is that consciousness is the only reality. Now, consciousness is an intimidating word for most of us. It's one of those academic, philosophical words that's thrown about. And a part of us knows it's important but may not fully understand what consciousness is. And I don't claim that I have all the answers, but through a lot of study of the law of attraction, spirituality, and science at large, I've been able to really tap into what Neville is pointing to when he says that consciousness is the only reality. And basically, why should we care about this? Well, this understanding this idea, breaking it down, really internalizing and embodying this idea at its full capacity. And spoiler alert, you kind of can't, because it's an infinitely deep and powerful concept. But basically, the more you can kind of tap into really what's being pointed at to by this phrase, you can start to hold in your heart this sense of knowing, this sense of faith, this sense of groundedness throughout all the storms of life, all of your current results, your current challenges, your current circumstances. You can kind of brush those aside and just maintain that sense of faith and peace and feeling of your wish being fulfilled, which obviously is very important in actually bringing your manifestation to life for real. So if you want that equipoise and that emotional control, that mastery, that groundedness, understanding this very notion is quite essential. Alright, so to get some context over where Neville uses this phrase, I'm just going to read a quote from one of his books. Remain faithful to the knowledge that your consciousness, your I-amness, your awareness of being aware of the only reality. It is the rock on which all phenomena can be explained. There is no explanation outside of that. I know of no clear conception of the origin of phenomena save that consciousness is all and all is consciousness. If there is darkness in my world, I created the darkness. If there is light and joy, I created the light and joy. There is no one but this I-amness that does all. You cannot find a cause outside of your own consciousness. Your world is a grand mirror constantly telling you who you are. These are not my words. They are the inspired words of men who discovered that consciousness is the only reality. So basically what he's saying here is that you, as a person, your consciousness, your I-amness, your presence, your perception isn't really limited to a person. He's saying that it is intimately connected with all events, with all things, with the world and the universe at large, and how you govern your relationship with all of the forms that we normally associate as outside of us, that is going to affect what shows up in your life. So it's a bold claim. It's a notion that sort of transcends the rational scientific paradigm, and for me that's very uncomfortable, because if you know my story, which I've shared in a couple of my other videos, I very much came from this background and I respect science in many vast ways, and I very much value the idea of proof and very careful skepticism of something before we entertain it as a fact. But of course, through my own study of spirituality, of science, of law of attraction, my own personal application and contemplation, you can get to a point where you can really grasp what's being pointed to by this. And it is a paradigm shift, but it's an empowering, positive one when it finally clicks for you. So prove this for yourself is my point in saying this. Okay, so to break down this idea further, to get some clarity on this for you, let's quickly define what consciousness is. Well, firstly, let's look at it through a scientific lens. So if Neville's saying that the substance of all things is consciousness, what would that look like from the scientific worldview? Well, we might think of consciousness more like energy, and we know from quantum physics that basically at the subatomic level, inside atoms are subatomic particles, and basically these, when not observed, are more like waves of probabilities, and once observed they collapse into quantum particles. And these quantum particles are sort of entangled particles of light that, once zoomed out at a more macro level, like a walking everyday reality perspective, appear as matter, but really they're not. So now let's take this spiritual worldview, and this is what enlightened masters try to teach us about: the oneness of all things, the unity of all things, cosmic consciousness, notions like this. And in my own personal experience in this field, consciousness being the one and only reality is basically the I amness, the stillness of being present in the moment, when all your thoughts, when all your judgments about reality, when your ego itself can quieten down and literally disappear out of your experience. And what's left in reality is simply the substance that unifies everything. And it's a beautiful, blissful, loving realization to have this kind of spiritual awakening, I guess you could call it. But in this state, when you literally, through your own perceptions, your own sense perceptions, see the unity of all things, you can start to realize that you're not confined to a body. And that is what Neville is trying to tell us. We're actually pure consciousness, and we're expanding consciousness. We're literally everything. But we obviously come back into our fixed point of view, and from there, with that knowledge, with that understanding, which we can deepen our connection to, and that would be another thing, that's sort of the spiritual path. Nonetheless, with that understanding, it can kind of shift our paradigm enough, open up our minds enough to realize that we're not just these limited things, and we can start applying the manifestation principles and tips and practices with that faith, with that knowing, with that knowledge and understanding always at the background of our mind, grounding it all. Okay, so what are the qualities of this consciousness? This one consciousness that is through everything, that you and I are all a part of this one unified field, quantum field. Well, firstly, it's infinite, which means it contains all the possibilities of every single life track on every possible form is contained within this unified field. That means your dream life is there. That means your dream desire is there. All of those literally already exist within this one structure. And so it's not simply a matter of, am I going to attract this thing? Maybe it'll happen, maybe it's not. The fact becomes, when you realize that consciousness is the one and only reality, is that it literally already exists. It's like a piece of fruit on a tree that I just choose to pick. That's the kind of attitude you can start to have with this. It becomes a playful certainty and a joyful, empowered state of being. That's what you're trying to tap into. Moving on, it's also grounded in the eternal present moment. So you can only experience one moment at a time. You can only literally ever be in this present moment. You are consciousness, but you're also presence. You can't be consciousness somewhere else. You have to be consciousness right now. And you're looking at me, I'm looking at a camera. That's all we can experience at this point. And we're actually shifting like a movie strip. You know, when you zoom out a movie strip and you see all the different frames, we're actually just like consciousness, just expanding like that, shifting through frame after frame after frame, but it's just present, 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 present. There is no real past or future. The past is really a present moment that already exists, and the future is also another present moment that already exists. I hope that's not too confusing. That does tap into the idea of parallel realities, which you may have heard in law of attraction circles, but the basic point is that everything already exists, always in the present moment, and it's in this infinite field. So, how can this benefit you? What are the ramifications of this? Well, as I said, it means that all it is up to you is to select your desire, to select your dream life, and to realize that it already exists right now, literally, as a present manifestation of consciousness, as a present moment, in other words, that basically you just have to tune to. And you will start to expand out. Expand out in non-linear ways, unexplainably complex ways, such that it just leads you towards a life situation in which your manifestation already exists and you get to experience it. So really, the law of attraction is not really about attraction. It's not like you're this confined, limited thing and you're sending out energy and you're like a magnet pulling it in. It's more like you're this infinite being that also is a singular point of view, and you are walking through life and expanding out in a way towards your manifestation, towards what you've brought to life, the seed of your imagination that you've planted in there. You're literally just walking towards that other form of consciousness that's also you, that already exists. That's what Neville is actually saying, is that how the mechanics of manifestation work with that phrase. Okay, so how can you develop this connection and this understanding to this idea in a practical way, such that you embody it? It's not just theory. It's not meant to be theory that you just rationally believe. It's meant to be a full experience that you immerse your way of life in. And that's really the only way you can convincingly understand this and tap into this, is beyond just the intellectual understanding of it. It's got to be embodiment. So, number one is study of the law of attraction. Whether this is reading books, whether this is listening to YouTubers or spiritual teachers or anything of the like, immersing yourself in this material starts to really open up your mind, and it starts to reprogram your subconscious mind through the repetition of it. It also starts to become this really rich, deep, complex grounding, this conceptual framework that once it becomes sufficiently strong, it can sort of be like a trampoline that you're kind of using it to stabilize yourself, but then you can sort of jump and just explode off it and leave all rational conceptual ideas behind, and that's where the true embodiment comes in. So study, I recommend doing a daily of at least 15 minutes of study of an audio book or a book, as I said before. And not just Neville Goddard. I know I'm a diehard fan of Neville Goddard, but there's also Dr. Joe Dispenza, or reality transurfing, or Abraham Hicks, or Wallace Wattles, or Napoleon Hill. And the list goes on and on. There's also, as I said, other resources online. Tip number 2 is to start a spiritual practice. This is going to quieten that ego of yours, that thinking mind, that rational control that you're always trying to see how reality is a linear cause and effect, and it can't quite grasp how reality could be so flexible and fluid in this almost hocus pocus kind of way. It just doesn't compute when you have a really intense ego. I'm speaking from personal experience. By ego, I just mean a thinking mind that won't stop. So if you start doing a meditation, maybe you want to do a yoga practice, but this will start to deepen your connection to presence and being. And from this space, you can start to literally see and become the very consciousness that you are, the very spiritual being you are, the very creator you are. Amazingly powerful. It's also fulfilling in its own self, because you get the spiritual growth that comes with that, and that's when you start to find your own true love and respect and joy for yourself in your own being in the present moment. It's a side bonus for some. And then finally, obviously, a manifestation practice that can silence any skepticism you have for this, can really prove it to you, is actually applying powerful manifestation practices on a daily basis, staying true to them and sticking to them like a gym routine or any other habit or routine or ritual you do. This should be a staple in your daily activities. 2 such habits are Neville Goddard's imagination process, which I have a video that you want to check out on that, and also reprogram your subconscious mind. I have a video on that that's very theoretical, and specifically a part of that is a desire tape. I also have a video on that, so you want to check those out for more ideas on the most powerful manifestation tools and practices to use in your life. Anyway, I know this is quite an out there video. I don't say any of this stuff lightly. It's taken me a ton of open-mindedness, a lot of fear actually, because you can feel like you're starting to walk off the deep end, but really it's a beautiful thing when you can actually experience this and know that in your heart it's true, and it's a personal thing. So I'm not trying to convince you necessarily. If anything, I'm going to inflame your interest, but maybe you'll disprove me. with your own experiments, with your own study. Alrighty guys, if you liked it, please like this video below, please comment, leave me some questions and video ideas, and also please subscribe to my channel for more videos on law of attraction, spirituality, and personal development. Thank you.